Number 2 story, tonight's worst persons in the world, the bronze Ari Fleischer. He's now taken over as public relations man for the BCS, the Bowl Championship Series, that labyrinthine maze of calculations that lets a computer determine college football's champions. He now says the alternative, a playoff system in which the top teams, decide the championship on the field, is, quote, like saying we should get rid of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and hold smaller parades all across America. Fleischer also called it an Obama, quote, playoff scheme. Actually, I don't know what I'm complaining about. Mr. Fleischer does for college football what he did for Mr. Bush. My alma mater, Cornell, last national champs in 1939 and 2-7 last year, will be ranked number 1 every week. The runner-up, Gretchen Carlson, the news model co-host of the television show that leaves out one tiny little detail on an average of every 3 minutes or so. After he is named Sports Illustrated's Man of the Year, she interviews Derek Jeter of the New York Yankees, calls him the last pure athlete in Major League Baseball. He seems to do everything right. So many people think you are this perfect guy. Her husband is Jeter's agent. Has been since the mid-1990s. So how much money she and her family has is largely dependent on people thinking Jeter is, I don't know, what would you call it? Like the last pure athlete, or that he does everything right, or he's perfect. Second biggest conflict of interest imaginable, and she never mentions it. And our winners, Gretchen Carlson and Steve Ducey and Brian Kilmeade, the other co-host of this propaganda fest over there, or fester, over there at Clusterfox. And today, as part of their made-up story they call Climate Gate, they had a scoop. Jon Stewart was denying global warming. Extraordinarily, Ducey said. They take a look at this. Jon Stewart of The Daily Show, which has historically bashed Republicans and, not bashed Democrats, really take a shot at Al Gore. Look at this. And they played this bite.
Or Al Gore. Global warming completely debunked via the very internet you invented. Oh, the irony. The irony.
And the Three Chipmunks came out and talked with Michelle Malkin about how even Jon Stewart was saying global warming had been debunked. Oh, the irony. In fact, Clusterfox used only a sliver of Stewart's remarks in order to utterly twist their meaning and to hide the nasty little detail about the Fox Climate Gate story. Here's the whole thing.
Poor Al Gore. Global warming completely debunked via the very internet you invented. Oh, the irony. The irony. Actually, the real story is not quite that sensational. Basically, emails stolen from scientists at one of the leading study centers for global warming show them discussing their work a bit, how do I put this, casually. Now, does it disprove global warming? No, of course not.
So Fox, which has twice showed the wrong video to make it seem like a poorly attended event had been drawn a much larger crowd, attributed this to on-screen errors. No doubt this example of using a tenth of the Jon Stewart soundbite completely out of context. This was made by an office assistant or a temp, or possibly some homeless person who wandered into the control room and took over the show. Couldn't possibly be another example of Rupert Murdoch's moral sellouts committing journalistic three-card Monty to advance a fraudulent political agenda. Of course not. Just the fault of Carlson, Ducey, and Kilmeade. But even if they're just the paid-to-play patsies, they are still today's worst persons in the world. New York number 3 best cold water splash. The Harlem Gospel Choir has pulled out of its appearance with Glenn Beck at his Lonesome Roads Beck's latest cult rally tonight, just after one of the many anti-Beck groups informed the famed singing group of Beck's claim that President Obama was a racist. The Harlem Gospel Choir then canceled its appearance. Spokesman told the New York Daily News that the official reason was the appearance fee was not enough. So your choice here is Beck is an anti-black racism monger, or he's cheap. Dateline, North Carolina, number 2 best withdrawal of support. The anti-immigration group ALAPAC, Americans for Legal Immigration, today announced Lou Dobbs has deeply offended his base of supporters. And the group, the first to suggest Dobbs run for president, has now dumped him. This is because, the group says, Dobbs went on the Telemundo network and said, quote, "What isn't working is a penalty to those who are in this country illegally, for whom we can both be building a bridge to the future in which there is legalization and at the same time constructing an environment in which everyone is clear and unequivocal about the need for border security and a regulated flow of immigration." So, without all the anti-Hispanic bigots in this country, Lou's backers would appear to be down to O'Reilly and his former guest host on the Dobbs show, Kitty Pilgrim. And Dateline Waukesha, Wisconsin, #1 best dumb criminal that we have for this victim of this rape, and use 30 Republican senators having voted against an amendment which would prevent the government from doing business with military contractors that deny their employees the right to sue for discrimination, including for sexual assault. 30 Republican senators furious about the heat they have been taking ever since for putting corporate enablers of rape ahead of women who have been raped. 30 Republican senators now blaming not themselves for the considerable fallout, but, in our fourth story in the countdown, targeting the Democrat who had deigned to introduce the amendment restoring victims' rights, if not common decency. That's right, they're blaming Senator Al Franken of Minnesota, and I'm not kidding. You will recall that, mortified by the story of former KBR Halliburton employee Jamie Lee Jones, who alleged she had been drugged, beaten, and gang raped at age 19 while working for the company in Baghdad. Senator Franken last month introduced his amendment to the Pentagon spending bill. The measure passed 68 to 30. 10 Republicans voted yes. 30 voted no. Those Republicans now mightily steamed about how they are being portrayed for their votes. And because they say Senator Franken is not doing enough to stop it. Senator Graham of South Carolina suggesting it would be helpful for Senator Franken to come forward and say, I'm not suggesting that anybody who votes for my amendment is indifferent to crimes against women or anybody else. Senator Bond of Missouri saying that from what he knows of Franken, he expected such tactics. Some senators like John Cornyn of Texas alleging that Senator Franken isn't abiding by the unwritten rules of the Senate. Quote, trying to tap into the natural sympathy that we have for this victim of this rape and use that as a justification to frankly misrepresent and embarrass his colleagues. I don't think it's a very constructive thing. I think it's going to make a lot of senators leery. Others, like Senator Thune of South Dakota, blaming the liberal blogosphere, which apparently rules the world. Quote, I don't know what his motivation was for taking us on, but I would hope that we won't see a lot of Daily Kos-inspired amendments in the future coming from him. I think hopefully he'll settle down and do kind of the serious work of legislating that it's important to Minnesota. I guess he's saying rape isn't important to the voters of Minnesota.